Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you with the next update to the Canadian election prediction series. So we had a bunch of polls we had the same number of polls we normally have. We've been getting around 3 every week. We've had at least 3 that I have access to. There's the weekly Monday Nanos poll update, the Tuesday Ledger poll update, and we had a September 30th Ipsos poll that was released yesterday that was included as well. I will note that all of these polls were conducted prior to the Green leadership race, so even though we now have a new Green leader, which I think her name is pronounced Ananami Paul. I apologize if that's not how you pronounce the name. I've never heard it spoken. Sorry. So we won't get to see until next week, or maybe the next couple weeks, if the new leader is going to have any impact on the Green Party as a whole. I would presume it should, though it's really hard to say. The one thing that is becoming more clear right now in the polling is there's a couple trends going on right now. So, in general, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba are becoming safer for the Conservatives, which is a bit redundant. There's not a lot of seats the Conservatives can really pick up, and I don't think they're becoming safer because the Conservatives are trying to make these seats safer. I think they're just becoming safer because particularly the Liberals are doing a bad job trying to appeal to those voters. So I think we'll see possibly in the next couple of weeks, like this Liberal seat in Alberta, this Liberal seat in Saskatchewan, maybe some more in Manitoba might flip to the Conservatives, which would give them a bit more wiggle room, but I don't really see that much changing there. BC, as always, is fairly volatile. I think the Conservatives are still being underpolled in BC. I would expect in an election that the Conservatives would be in the minus 40 margin lead. The sub 40 margin lead, so like mid 30s in the front. They're not quite there, but I would expect that to happen. But that said, I think the Liberals have done a good job closing the gap here in British Columbia, and I think you're not going to see, at least in the near term, some of the mid 40, 50s or 50, 60 range that BC's had in the early 2000s. I think that those days might be gone unless the Conservatives can make a new appeal or the Liberals just fumble it away. The other places that we're seeing some interesting movement is Quebec. So the Liberals are losing some steam in Quebec. Before they were gaining some during COVID, and now it's starting to fall back, and the Conservatives are coming up behind them. They're taking up some Liberal support, some Bloc support. I really wouldn't be surprised if they keep getting if the polling keeps the way it's going, and we might start seeing the Conservatives gaining seats in Quebec, though that would be at the expense of the Bloc and not at the expense of the Liberals, because the only seat that the Conservatives have potentially are Trois-Rivières, Beauport, and another riding that I'm blanking on. I always blank on it. Some of these ridings in Quebec are like 4 or 5 words, like regions strung together as one riding. Kind of like in Nova Scotia, we have like South Shore St. Margaret's Bay, which is 2 areas strung together in one riding, but like you'll see some of these Quebec places that are like 4. Some of these Quebec ridings are like 4 or 5 places strung together. So it gets very confusing to remember which ones are which off the top of your head if you don't look at them a lot. And so we're also seeing some interesting movement in the Maritimes. PEI is getting safer for the Liberals, which is pointless. They already have all 4 seats. So them getting safer there doesn't do anything. Newfoundland is getting a bit safer too, and the NDP seat in Newfoundland's now, I wouldn't say a marginal seat yet, but it's getting close to being a marginal seat. So it is theoretically possible that if an election were to happen, like it is within reason that the Liberals could pick up that seat in an election, whereas picking up a rural Alberta seat is almost impossible for the Liberal Party, to give you somewhat comparison there. So it's quite possible. New Brunswick and Nova Scotia are two interesting ones here for the Liberals and Conservatives. Right now, the Liberals are polling better, but also the Conservatives are polling better in these two provinces because the NDP and Green are losing ground. NDP are losing ground in New Brunswick, and Green and NDP are losing ground in Nova Scotia. I will note there's not a lot of individual province polling for for places like New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, so my model does do prediction on it, and in the cases of New Brunswick, the reason why I have NDP losing a lot more ground than the Green is I looked at the recent provincial election where the New Brunswick Green Party did quite well, so I'm assuming that would hold similar to a federal election. I just don't really see a scenario where the Green Party would do really well provincially and then do really bad federally. Same with PEI. I have the PEI Green Party doing better than the PEI NDP because of the same reason. So overall, there's really not much movement. Ontario, both Liberals and Conservatives are losing ground to the NDP. We'll see maybe if that continues a week or two, the NDP could pick up some seats, which frankly Singh really needs. He's sitting at 21 here. That's not a good number for him. I don't think he's going to be able to make some movement in BC unless the Liberals lose steam. It's just very difficult for the NDP to gain seats when the Liberals are surging in BC polling. There's just not a lot of room for NDP to grow. They've eroded some of the Green support, it looks like. But there's just not a lot of room for NDP. When you have 3-4 left-wing parties, obviously this is a simplified model because there are places where it's not Green, NDP, Liberal, Conservative. It's like actually in BC, some of these ridings in like North BC area on the coast are NDP or Conservative. Those are the two parties that win or lose elections in those ridings. It's not like NDP with a small Liberal and a Conservative. It's like, nope, there's the NDP and there's the Conservatives. But if we abstract a bit, the general voting base of the NDP tries to take the left-leaning Liberals and the union-minded Conservatives, and they're having a hard time with that because there's not... I think they have most of the union-minded Conservatives in BC already, and they are losing... I mean, actually, I think they're also losing them right now, but they had them to begin with, and they're only losing ground in that demographic. And I think the Liberals are winning the swing NDP Liberal voters in BC. It makes it hard for them. That's been happening in Ontario too. So, though that said, I think the NDP are starting to erode these swing voters. So maybe we'll see them picking up some seats in GTA or something. But that's really all we're going to get from this. So let's switch over to the weekly trends. So we have three weeks of this so far. So you see at this graph here, there's really little movement. Very little movement. We look like the Conservatives went from 34.17 to 34.24 to 34.21. Not a lot of movement. Same thing with PPC. Not a lot of movement. Maybe a slight upward trend, but it's so small and their voting support is quite low. It's really hard to tell. So really, I guess the best way to phrase it, instead of going through all of them, it looks like PPC, Bloc, and Conservatives are just kind of fluctuating around their point. So for Bloc, it looks to be about 7. PPC looks to be about like 1.8-ish, and the Conservatives like 34.2. They're just fluctuating around. No real increase in support. I would say any bump that Aaron O'Toole has created for the Conservatives is worn out, and they're not going to. Now for the Conservatives, they want to gain more support. It's just a slow grind of building support or people losing faith in Trudeau, which I don't think losing faith in Trudeau is going to be a major seat gainer, because the only people, unless you see like the region like the Maritimes or Ontario lose faith in Trudeau, I really don't think it's going to cause much impactful movement. The only real interesting movement actually in the net polling is nationally. Obviously, you can look at all these provincial numbers and you can see other things, and I don't really want to spend the whole time going through all of them. That will take a while. You can just kind of look at them. If people are really interested, I can make another video where I go through the trends in the provinces to talk about why I think they're happening and what this could mean or what this could lead to. But comment below if you want that. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. You can look at it yourself on the screen. The screen's not changing very much, so you should be able to easily see all this. But for the Green Party, we are seeing right here, they're losing support every single week. Now, mind you, this is before their new leader. So it's very possible that they're going to see a rebound with the new leader in effect. I doubt it, though. The Green Party, like, Canadian politics just doesn't get enough news coverage, so it's very, very difficult for a leader bump to really occur, because you just don't get the publicity. And I'll be honest, I don't think anyone knows who. I don't even know how to pronounce her name. What is it? Enemy Paul? Like, I've looked her up because, I mean, I'm making a video about polling and who's going to win an election. I should know the leaders, but I bet most people don't, and that's going to be really hard trouble for her, because the media is not going to help her. They're not going to cover her. She's going to have a hard time, but maybe we'll see a bump for her. I think the big issue the Greens are facing right now is climate change is basically dropping off of people's radars right now. COVID, the economy, national debt are all bigger issues right now, and COVID, of course, healthcare. So the Greens' traditional support point is not doing very good for them. There's not a lot of desire or push for it. People just don't have the stomach to spend more money on green stuff right now, it seems. And this is not me speculating. There's polling on this. I believe the polling is it's like Canadians are only willing to spend like $100 a person to fight climate change. So there's just not a lot of support right now. I think that's why we're seeing them go down, and everyone else just seems to be fluctuating around their stable point, with the Greens being the only net movement. But we'll see. Obviously, this is 3 weeks, so it's not much of a trend. I'm going to rephrase this. This is 3 weeks with, like, I think I have 20 polls in this, but the last 2 weeks I've only really added, like, 5 and 3 polls. So, well, it'll be what it is. That said, if you liked the video, please like, share, comment below. If you want to ask questions, if you want to hear my opinions on what I think different parties are doing, how I think leaders are doing, where I think the election will be interesting to watch, where the movement's going to be, where the swing's going to be. All these things. If you want to know them, want my opinion on them, comment below. I'll answer all the comments that I have anything to say about. If I don't answer your comment, it's just I read all the comments. If I don't answer your comment, it's just there's nothing I have to say to it. So yeah, like, share, subscribe. Otherwise, have a good day. Hope everyone has a good week, and otherwise, see you next time.